I am not teaching, I am publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning for the Life in the UK test, part 504 or 514, while doing leg stretching. And if you participate in the leg stretching method, yeah, ask. And we are just here in take 4, I think, of trying to list down in one video to a second camera which I have running next to it some great British inventions. So I'm going to continue there directly with take 5 or so. We are doing the first exercise. We're having the legs out and we're going a bit in front, and you can pull also the toes in. Some British inventions of the 20th century. In the 1920s did John Logie Baird develop the television, and it was firstly successfully broadcasted from London to Glasgow in 1932. Sir Robert Watson Watt developed the radar. He had the idea that radar signals could be used to detect airplanes, and in 1935 that was for the first time done successfully. Also in the 1930s was the jet engine developed by Sir Frank Whittle. And we're going to the next exercise. I want to have it in an order, in a time frame. I also forgot for John. Some British inventions of the 20th century. John Logie Baird developed in the 1920s the television, and the first time successfully broadcasted was in 1932 from London to Glasgow. There was then also in the 1930s Sir Frank Whittle, who developed the jet engine, and also Sir Robert Watson Watt, who had the idea that radio signals could be used to detect airplanes, and so the first radar station was used in 1935. Alan Turing built the Turing machine, and that is in many ways the basis of computers, of modern computers. Then there was John McLeod, who co-discovered insulin, which is used to treat diabetes, and also the Harrier jumper jet, an airplane which can start vertically. Then there was in 1953 at London at Cambridge University the DNA structure of molecules discovered, and there was then Francis Crick, who was a British person, who got a Nobel Prize for that. Then there was Sir Bernard Lovell. He built in Cheshire at Jodelbrink the largest radio telescope of the world at that time, and it's still in use. And then there is Sir Christopher Cockerell. He built the Hoovercraft in the 1950s. And Britain and France together built the Concorde, a supersonic airplane. And that was firstly done in 1969. And then there was James Goodfellow. He built the cash dispensing ATM machine, and this was installed at Barclays Banks in 1967 in London. And the IVF therapy, the in vitro fertilization therapy, was in 1978 first done successfully, and that were Patrick Steptoe and Sir Robert Edwards. And then there was Sir Peter Mansfield, and he developed the MRI, the magnetic resonance imaging. And then there was Dolly the sheep in 1969, and that was Sir Ian Wilmot and Keith Campbell, they cloned. And then there is the World Wide Web by Sir Tim Berners-Lee. On the 25th of December 1990, he firstly sent something about the World Wide Web. And that is according to the Life in UK test handbook on the pages 56 and 57. Now we did the exercise along with changing to the other leg. Did I not forget something? I think I actually named all. Okay, now we have done the take. We're doing it on the other side a bit. Let's stretch. And we can move on to Margaret Thatcher. Pull the toes in. She was the daughter of a grocer from Grantham in Lincolnshire. We already did it all, just for context. We are just trying now to shoot a video about Margaret Thatcher. She trained as She trained as a chemist and lawyer. She became a Conservative Member of Parliament in 1959. Okay, but it's enough of the exercise. I'm going to stop the camera for the inventions. And we go on to the next leg stretching exercise. We're doing the cart raiser. 90-90 with the legs, with the hands to the knee, which is behind of us, and we're leaning with the shoulder in front of the knee, which is in front of us. Chemist and lawyer, elected Member of Parliament, Conservative, 59. Then Secretary of State for Education. Secretary of State for Education in 1970. Secretary of State for Education, 1970. In 1970, she became the Secretary of State for Education. 59, Conservative Member of Parliament. 70, Secretary of State for Education. Secretary of State for Education. Education and Science. Secretary of State for Education and Science. In 57, she was becoming then the leader of a Conservative party. And we have the leader of the opposition. We're going to the other side. Again, 1990, and we're leaning, well, we have a hand behind, and then we're leaning in front. So, what was it? 75. When did the Conservative Party, which she was the leader of, win the general election of 79, and she became Prime Minister. She was the first woman who did that. Then she was the longest-serving Prime Minister of the 20th century for 11 years. How long was Winston Churchill? He was 2 times. So it was not for 70 years, but it was for 51 until 57, maybe just 10 years, maybe it's something like that. So when she was Prime Minister from 79 to 19. There were important economic reforms done. She worked closely with Ronald Reagan, and she recognized and welcomed the changes of the Soviet Union, which then led to the end of the Cold War. Previously nationalized industry, or just nationalized industry, were privatized, and legal controls were imposed on trade union powers. So, we're going to the next exercise, just 1990. I'm leaning in front. Okay, we have here economy, where we have privatization of nationalized industries. Could we name it here? There were many strikes in the 70s, but if we say that, we are saying that this both has something to do with each other, and I don't know if it's true. But it makes sense. Let's not do it. Okay, privatization of nationalized industries. If I say it like that, people will think I have just read it somewhere and don't know what even what I'm talking about. They privatized nationalized industries. But if I say it are the ones previously nationalized, I don't know if it's true. And legal controls on the trade unions. I still don't know what the trade unions are. I'm still sticking to my assumption, but I don't know. Know the pigeon pose. Do it only if you already know how to do the pigeon pose. Okay. Legal restrictions, legal controls on trade union, and privatization of nationalized industries. Then there was deregulation. And that made the City of London increased the role of the City of London, and that helped to make the City of London to an international centre for investments, insurance and other financial services. Investment, insurance and other financial services. During the 80s, the shipbuilding and coal mining declined. In 1982, there was the Falkland War. We never named it here the Falkland War, but I think it's accepted generally as a war, as the Falkland War. In 1982, did Argentina invade the Falkland Islands, a British overseas territory, and then a British naval task force, or the British Navy, or the British military reconquered the islands. Okay. That is all we have to Margaret Thatcher. We couldn't mention John Major. I don't know if it's helpful. That is not helpful. It confuses people only. I don't know. Okay, Margaret Thatcher. Chemist and lawyer, trained, 59 Conservative Member of Parliament, 70 Secretary of State for Education and Science, 75 Leader of the Conservative Party, opposition when also leading. 79 general election win for the Conservative, she became Prime Minister until 1990. While she was Prime Minister, she worked closely with Ronald Reagan and welcomed the changes and recognized and welcomed the changes in the Soviet Union, leading to the end of the Cold War. Or these changes led to the end of the Cold War. There were things changed, number of important economic reforms, things were changed in the rules for the economy. For example, the nationalized industries privatized, the trade unions were restricted in their power, and deregulation happened, and that led to making London a center for investment, insurance, and other financial services. We could name it shipbuilding and coal mining declined. 1982, the Falkland Islands, Argentina invaded, a naval task force recovered or reconquered the islands. Okay, I'm gonna start the other camera again. And we're doing now strictly the REG on the other side. First 1990. And we're going just in front. And let's go into the pigeon pose and try it. Margaret Thatcher. She was a chemist and a lawyer. Then, when was it? 59. There was something else in 59. What was it? 59. 70 cabinet ministers. Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was a chemist and a lawyer. And in 1959, she became a member for the Conservative. Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was a chemist and a lawyer. And in 1959, she became a member of Parliament for the Conservatives. In 1970, she became then the Secretary of State for Education and Science. And then in 1975, she became the leader of a Conservative Party, and now from then on, she was leading the opposition. Then in the general election in 1979, her party, the Conservatives, won the general election, and now she became the first Prime Minister who was a woman. And so she was now from 1979 until 1990, for 11 years, the longest time which someone was Prime Minister in the 20th century in Britain, Prime Minister. So Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister from 1979 until 1990. She worked closely together with Ronald Reagan, the US-American president at the time, and she welcomed and recognized the changes in the Soviet Union, which then led to the end of the Cold War. There were things done in the economy while she was Prime Minister. For example, the nationalized industries privatized, and the trade unions were in the power restricted, and there happened deregulation, and that helped to make the City of London a center for investment and financial services. In 1982, so while she was Prime Minister, Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, and a naval task force was formed to recover and reconquer the islands. And that is according to the Life in the UK Test Handbook on the pages 58 and 59. It was a bit fast at the end. It doesn't really make sense to end with the Falkland Wars. But it's okay. We are done with the pigeon pose, and we are going into the butterfly stretch. The soles of the feet together, and we're sitting tall up, and we're just stretching in front. Okay, in the next video we will try to do the Roald Dahl subject, and then we're going to look. We had done this with the partition of Ireland, the part about Ireland already, so I don't think if we can do something about that. And the Afghanistan and Iraq thing, that is totally outdated. Then we're going to do something about Brexit. So in the next video we will do Roald Dahl and maybe Brexit. But for now, I thank you very much, and until next time.